Welcome back to Unplugged and Unstoppable, the antidote for being black-pilled. And in this episode, we meet Robin Harris, who now lives in the beautiful spot in Wales, just south of the Brecon Beacons and north of Abergavenny, in a 7-acre plot with nothing but fresh water, homegrown vegetables, and lovely fruit trees in an orchard. And her life now is truly unplugged. And when you listen to Robin's story, she introduces you to the subject of metaconsciousness. So in this episode, we're going to learn how Robin's own personal journey through civil service, a job which she enjoyed, but then became totally stressful. Her life became full of complaints and ailments, physical ailments. And she then started looking into the subject of metaconsciousness and energy. And you're going to hear all about how that was the solution to her problems. So my hope is you learn something from this deep dive into what metaconsciousness is. And if you want to know more, Robin's website details and her socials are all in the show notes. So let's get on with the show. Let's meet Robin now. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm delighted to have with me today Robin Harris, who lives not far from the Brecon Beacons, just north of Abergavenny. And so, Robin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Robin. I'm really delighted to be here and excited to see where this conversation might take us.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we had a little bit of chat before we jumped on camera and a little bit last week. And I just know that your story is going to be so powerful to those who are really feeling stuck and maybe some people are suffering with some health issues possibly, and those that really looking for a positive direction, a new direction. Because I think when I start to ask you about your past, where you've come from, there's going to be some real power in that journey. So let's start with give us an idea of what life was like before you started to move into where you are today.
Gosh, how far back do you want me to go? I think it really started when I was a child, and I grew up in Belfast during the Troubles. They started the year I was born. And I think reflecting on this before today, it's hard to say when you look back just what was going on in your head when you were a child. But I know that I had a strong sense that we are supposed to be connected as human beings. We're supposed to be connected to each other. We're supposed to be connected to the world in which we live, to the nature all around us, to animals. I would say it now as, well, we are all one. Of course we are. And we have that interconnection and interdependence. I wouldn't have had those words as a child, but I felt that we are designed to be here for joy and for connection. Growing up in Northern Ireland in the Troubles, I did not see that. That was not what was happening around me. It also wasn't really what was happening in my home life either. And I think that was a source of great frustration and confusion and discombobulation for me. I just couldn't see why people couldn't connect, couldn't see, well, you're just another human being. You are me as the other. And I used to be quite outspoken in our home about that. And at the time, there was a lot of sort of propaganda in the news locally at that point saying careless talk costs lives, because there was a lot of tit for tat from one side to the other.
Yes.
And my mum worked as a radiographer in one of the local hospitals, and she said, you have to stop talking like this because you are going to get yourself in serious trouble. But I also remember walking on the peace marches and campaigning for peace, and then to do that with my mum, and then at home to be told, but don't speak out. It was conflicting information. There was a lot of conflicting information in my education in the church as well. This is not how it's supposed to be. Life is designed for connection and joy. And then a lot of stuff happened. My parents split, and that was a really, really difficult time for me. And that started me pushing things down, not talking about stuff, not looking at stuff. And I carried on with that for years. And then I went through ME for a while and recovered from that, but only on a superficial level. And then came to England to study and got married, got divorced, having sworn my parents got divorced. I will never, ever go through that again. We ended up going through that again because I was just repeating the old patterns. I wasn't addressing the issues. I was pushing them down.
Okay.
All fine, keep going. And had lost that sense of connection and joy. And then carry on a few years further down the line, and I was experiencing a lot of health niggles. I was borderline for a lot of conditions. I was heading towards burnout, and having already had ME, I thought, I've got to do something. I've got to do something really serious, turn things around. And my husband said to me, you've had a sense of humour bypass, and I got really scared that I was going to lose that marriage as well. So
that's a wake-up call. And
was
that your second marriage?
Yeah. It felt like a kick up the behind. And so I realised my life was full of stress and I wasn't dealing with it. So I needed something for me. And I decided to study Reiki, which led me in a rather circuitous route back to connection and animals and nature. And then I studied EFT with one of your earlier guests, Sam Neffendorf.
Yes, and lovely. That's awesome.
Then went on through a lot of synchronous connections to study the thing that really rocked my world, changed my world, got me into all sorts of exciting things like quantum world, and that's metaconsciousness.
Okay.
And it's all of the things that I learned along that journey, that it's our perception, it's how we look at the world, and when we change that, as Wayne Dyer said, everything else changes, and we get to do that. When we unplug,
so that's
thinking of that unplugged and unstoppable, when we unplug from the beliefs that aren't serving us, that we've maybe kind of got into a rut with, when we unplug from that habit and start doing more conscious creation of the habits we want and the life that we want, we can do that. We can change everything.
Amazing. Okay, so give us a little bit more context. Let's learn a bit more about the setting and the context of where you were in your first marriage. So what kind of work were you doing and where were you living?
I was a sign language interpreter and I was living in Bristol at that time. I had trained in Bristol, and actually initially when I finished my training, my first job with my fiance at the time, we moved to Kent, and I worked for an organisation for deaf people in Kent as an interpreter. So I would travel the whole of that county, and that was really challenging because neither of us knew anybody in Kent, and his job kept him very busy. He didn't drive, and my job had me travelling the whole of the county at all hours of the day, right up to sort of 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, starting then the next morning at 9 o'clock. We just had no time together, no time to make friends, and it was very difficult. And then his dad died, so we moved back to Bristol. His mum lived in Portishead. We moved back to Bristol and I got a job at the university, which happened at the same time that we got home from somewhere and there was a letter on the mat saying that this job had become available at the university where I trained, and he got the call that his dad had died. So we ended up moving back. I started work at Bristol Uni, and that was really, really stressful I think I was there for 3 years in the end.
Okay.
And that nearly broke me. And that was a large part of what led.
What was the cause of this? What was the cause of the stress at Bristol Uni?
Partly because I was the only interpreter and there were 10 deaf people, and I was supposed to be interpreting for all of them, but they were all doing different things at different times. And it was also down to funding and down to my manager and also the university's relationship to the department. They didn't really like it, and eventually they closed it and got rid of it. So there's a whole lot.
Okay, so it was a kind of unwanted department. And was your boss a supportive sort of guy or girl?
No, he wasn't.
No. Okay, tell us a little bit about that.
One example is that because I was an interpreter, I had to be hidden from everybody else because I would be potentially making private phone calls and nobody else should be able to see. Never mind the fact that everybody else in the office was hearing, so they'd hear me anyway if I was voicing over for a deaf person. So because I was in a shared office, they put up barriers around my desk and I had to sit in there all day long, every day. And another person in the department said, that's abuse, that's cruelty. To be stuck in isolation, effectively, all day long.
Absolutely.
And it was like the wall was there and the wall was there. There was no more space for me because of all these barriers up around so that nobody could see me, but the others could hear me, so it didn't make sense. So she went and spoke to the head of the department and said, you cannot do that, take those down. and they came down the very same day. But it was that I didn't feel able to say that myself, and that somebody had to point out the fact that that was like putting me in isolation, which, as we know, isolation is one of, I mean, they use it for prisoners as punishment, don't they? That is one of the worst things that can be done to a human being. We're a social species. If we choose to go off on our own, that's fine. But it's being enforced and feeling like it's a punishment. You've done something wrong, therefore go and sit, like putting you in the corner.
Okay, and picking up on something you said earlier, which is I had all these different clients doing different things at different times. That's a recipe for massive stress because you've got no control over it. And when you feel like you're in control, the stress goes. But if you can't keep a control over it, it's constant throwing wild cards at you, which you can only do for a short period, can't you?
Yeah, firefighting all of the time. And it's that idea of demand control schema. When the demands placed upon you are higher than the control that you feel you have, the choices, the ability to change your situation, then that's overwhelm. That's stress.
Yeah, of course.
And that's where I was.
So you carried all of this stress into the next phase of your life, and you obviously met your husband today. And I guess, were there any lessons that you took from that moment to the moment he said you've lost your sense of humour, or were you still kind of treading water all the way through?
There was a crossover between the first husband and the second husband during this period of 3 years where I was working at that department. And so I was still in that stress when the second husband said that to me. But there was an added stress because the funding came from Access to Work. And they were saying, well, we're not going to fund it anymore. And the university were saying, well, we can't fund it. So every month I was getting my P45, and then they would have a conversation between the university and Access to Work, and they would agree, right, we'll fund you for another month while we discuss this. And the next month the same again, and the next month the same again. So I'd effectively get my contract, and almost with the P45, contract for a month, with the P45 the next month, every month. And in the end, I just said, I can't do this anymore. So I said, well, next time I get my P45, I'm keeping it. I'm not taking the contract, I'm just taking the P45. And the funny thing was, they weren't able to do anything then, that they didn't have an interpreter, they needed one, so they had to employ me on a freelance basis for quite some time after that, because they didn't. But then eventually they got 3 interpreters in the department, and I was one of them for a while, so that was better.
Okay, and give us some insight as to what changes you had to make, given your husband's quite startling announcement about you losing your sense of humour. What did you do as a result?
That was when first of all, I went to the doctor, because that's what you do, isn't it? If you're not feeling very well, if you're struggling, you go to the doctor. And also, I knew that the doctor couldn't help me. That wasn't the kind of help I needed. But I had to prove this. I had to be able to say to people, I've done everything. I wasn't in victimhood at all. So I went to the doctor and they gave me a prescription and referred me for counselling. I don't like taking medications, but I took it anyway. 1 pill. I was so lost, disconnected, spaced, totally zoned out, that I lost my car in the car park, just wandering round and round and round like a zombie. So I swore to myself, I'm not taking any more of those. And I went to the counselling, and that didn't work for me either. We're going back 20, 25 years. And the particular counselling that I was referred to by the GP was not solutions-based. It was just tell me, just talk about it. And I just felt I'm recreating this stuff and I'm not getting any answers. I'm not moving forward. And it was recently, looking back, I realised that the reason I knew they weren't going to work for me was because they left me feeling more dependent on a pill, dependent on somebody to wave a magic wand for me. Whereas what I wanted was to see if I could find the answers within, so that then I knew I had a toolkit to draw on, because I knew life is always going to throw you curveballs. It's always going to throw something out of left field that you're not expecting. How do I deal with that if I don't have a toolkit? And I feel like I don't have a toolkit.
I felt the same when I had a counsellor in my early 20s. I went to see someone for anxious depression, and all they were doing is just echoing how I felt. And I thought, I'm just carrying this amplified out of each session. It's very friendly. It's very nice. But does it actually, like you say, provide the answers? And in the end, after about 4 sessions, I stopped. So tell us what happened next.
So having proved to myself that the medication and the counselling weren't going to work, I thought, what can I do? I have tried everything. You know that phrase that we get to that point of, I've tried everything, nothing's working. And I felt it was me. If I've tried everything and I've done what the doctors told me to do, it must be me. I'm the problem. So I decided somehow that I needed to do some stuff for me. And that was when I started learning Reiki. And that took me on to training with the Healing Trust, which was fantastic because it was 2 years, lots of input, lots of practice, case studies, that community of my fellow students and being able to work on each other and learn together. It was a very special time. And then going on to also work with animals, because having been through that first part of that journey, as I was saying earlier, I got reconnected with nature and with animals, which have always been my love since I was tiny. And I then studied with Liz Whiter in Sussex for healing with animals. I did 2 years for small animals and then did an equine specialism, because horses are one of my huge passions.
And you talk about specialism. Does this mean you become a certified Reiki practitioner? Is that what it is for both people and, is it equine? Was it horses?
It was, first of all, with the Healing Trust. So I'd done my Reiki and been qualified with the Reiki Federation in the UK. And then I qualified with the Healing Trust. That's energy healing. It's the same kind of thing as far as I'm concerned, but they are two separate organisations and they call what they do separate names. And then I did energy healing with small animals, so I got a diploma qualification in that, and then went on to get a diploma in the same with horses. Okay, so
I'm guessing that all of this qualification is, and you now set an intention to go and do something more, I wouldn't call it productive, because helping in theory, translation service is a very beautiful thing. But what I'm hearing you say is the authorities' way of organising that discipline was horrendous, and you needed a break or some way of getting out of that way of working.
Absolutely. Also, there was the fact that I think initially when I went into interpreting, I was thinking this is a way to make the playing field even, because deaf people have a pretty rough time. They don't have a voice, by and large, in our community. So I thought being an interpreter gave them the opportunity to have that voice. But I discovered it doesn't. You just go in there as the little token, and you might be voicing what a deaf person is saying. You might be giving them access to what's being said in English through sign language. But it hasn't evened the playing field. They're still where they were before because nothing else has changed. The whole attitude.
Yeah, and I'm sure
they're all the same.
Yes, and I'm sure even with the best will in the world, the timing of the scheduling of appointments and conversations quite often didn't work with their schedule either. So it was a bit of a challenge.
Or their culture. There was no allowance for what's a deaf person's way of seeing the world. Or the fact that a deaf person has a lot to offer because they were 100%. Just, oh, well, you can have your say, but nobody's listening to you any more than they were before, really. And that's a huge generalization. But if I can just give you a quick example. I was with one of the top people in our department at, I think it was a dean's soiree kind of a thing. And the dean came over to speak with a person who was high up in our department, because that's what you do. And I'm there interpreting between the two. And then somebody came up and spoke to the dean, and the dean just turned away and walked off. No, excuse me, something has come up, nothing, just having a conversation, gone. And I turned to the deaf person with my jaw scraping the floor. And he just said, yeah, that's perfectly normal. And I just wanted to scream at that point.
Do you know what? It actually makes me makes me feel that the online business space that I operate in, there's an amazing opportunity to help serve that community. Like, I bet you there's some real creatives out there who'd love to start an online business, but I'm just thinking from my own lens. Now let's move on to, I'm keen to find out what made you, like, we first connected because I sent an email shot and we were both studying common law at the time. And I guess I've got to ask you, give us an idea of what made you a critical thinker. What was it that triggered your curiosity and awareness, such that most of us call it like an awakening, but what started you on that journey of asking questions?
I think I had been asking questions as a child, and then got shut down for asking those questions. So maybe it was a reconnection with that. And I think what really did it for me was the whole well-being, because I still had somewhere deep inside me that belief that, well, we're supposed to be here for joy. We're supposed to be here for connection. Where is it?
Yes.
Nobody is talking about it in my world. Nobody is teaching it and showing how to. And I'm feeling very frustrated. I'm feeling like I'm the lone person who's looking for this. Where is it? And I think it was that question deep inside of me that I just wasn't getting answers to, that I had to go and search for.
Were you a person who looked into things when something bothered you, or were you constantly looking at things, or, you know, what kind of level were you researching as you were, you know, going through your 20s and 30s? I'm guessing you were growing into the woman you are today. Like, when were you asking questions, and what kind of questions were you asking?
As a child, I was always asking, why is it like this? Why do people not get on? These different camps, allegedly Catholics and Protestants, we're just people living on this space. Why can't we get on? What's all this fighting about? It doesn't make sense. Why are we always looking at history rather than just...
Yes.
And that's not to say there's no place for looking at history, but why do we always have to drag up the old bitter arguments and anger and hatred, rather than seeing that we have more in common than we have different? And why are animals seen as being lesser? And why does nobody seem to think about the environment and love it and be out in it and enjoy it? And why are we all so miserable? Why is life so grey when I think we're here to be full of colour and variety. I lived in Belfast in the 70s and 80s. Every face was white. I loved seeing different places, mostly in UK, where there were multicultural groups of people. And I first went to university in Manchester, and there's the Curry Mile in Manchester in Rusholme. And I loved it. You could see people, and obviously being in a university in the UK as well, lots of people from all over coming together. I thought it was so rich and great sharing. I loved that.
So I'm guessing by the time we hit 2020, were you like on high alert? Did you realize something wasn't quite right when the whole kind of pandemic thing started?
Not specifically about that. Generically about well-being, I think, because I'd already come across Metaconsciousness by that point. It wasn't given that name at the time, but it's all about the fact that any symptoms we experience, be they cognitive, emotional, physical, they're just information. Our body's seeking to communicate with us all the time, and it's seeking to tell us, this is what works for me, this doesn't work for me, let's follow the stuff that works and let's move away from the stuff that doesn't. So it's sending us these little signals all the time. And we may experience those as symptoms. In our mostly Western allopathic medical system, if you feel pain, what do? You take a pill, you try to get rid of that pain. So one of my questions was, why do we medicate this pain? Why don't we explore this pain? This pain is just information. It's just our body wanting to talk to us. Why do we have to push it down, get rid of it on a superficial level? It's still there, it hasn't gone away. Rather than sit down and dialogue with it, explore it, see what it has to teach us. Because that was what I'd learned when I finally got on the right track for all of those niggling experiences I was having. I realised, oh, my body's just talking to me. If I listened, if I learned, but nobody's teaching us how to listen. And that was
understood.
That was where I was, rather than specifically about the pandemic.
Yeah, of course. Okay. So going back then, so your husband's giving you the wake-up call, you're leaving in stages by the sound of this work. Did you pick up and start a Reiki business whilst doing the working with the deaf community still on a freelance basis?
Yes, while doing the freelance work, yes, I was still freelance interpreting.
So it's
setting up a well-being business at that point. Yeah.
Brilliant, because I'm keen to share with people how you do unplug from a mainstream world. You know, what are the key milestones? How do you get there? And for most, it's you've got to do a side hustle for a bit and you've got to transition out. And sometimes if you're lucky enough to have freelance work, you can have gaps in that freelance work or take more breaks or drop to 4 days, then 3, then 2. Did you have any kind of transition like that? And how did you get your business like truly up and running?
It's been, so my business, I formed a limited company in 2013, and it's changed so much since then, because I've, if other people, I think, will probably, if you're a practitioner of any kind, will resonate with the fact that it's, ooh, shiny object, let me just learn that, and I'll learn that, and I'll add that to my toolkit. And so yes, it's changed quite a lot over the period of time up to now. I still interpret, but now I'm actually bringing my skills with sign language together with my learning about well-being and delivering workshops and doing talks and so on in sign language. Because if we're not getting it in the hearing world, I'm certainly not seeing it in the sign language using world. So I love to share this, and because the deaf community has given me so much over the years since I first went and started to learn sign language and spend time amongst deaf people, and they have the most amazing community and culture, and so it just feels right to give something back for all that they've given me.
We'll have to set up a follow-up meeting. I'd love to explore business opportunities, if you can see how we might be able to empower the more entrepreneurial people in that community. That would be a lovely thing to be able to do.
There are a lot now, particularly with the younger age group. Generally, there are more entrepreneurs because that's what the future is. There's a lot more about working for yourself nowadays.
Absolutely fantastic. Now you're going to have to do some education on me, because I need to learn a bit more about metaconsciousness. I think that's how you're saying it. What is it, and how does it apply? Like, eventually I would like you to describe what's a good client look like for you, and how do you help them? That would be an amazing thing to learn.
Metaconsciousness isn't a therapy. It's more just a way of looking at ourselves and the world around us and how we relate to that world. So it looks at our beliefs. It looks at what's going on in our body. It looks at why that would be happening in that way at that time. And it's based on 5 well-being laws, 5 laws of nature, biological. And this is something that I love to do. I love to pull words apart and to see a deeper meaning. So when I wrote my book, I have a lot of words that I've hyphenated that aren't hyphenated when you see them normally. And my editor was saying, you're going to have to explain why you're doing that, because people are going to go, what? Is it just a typo? What is it? But biological, if you listen to the words like that, it's the wisdom of our body, the logic.
Yes.
Yeah, the knowledge, the wisdom of our body. So that's basically what metaconsciousness is. It's listening to that wisdom, allowing that wisdom to teach us, guide us, show us what's going on. And there are 5 biological laws of nature, one of which says that any dis-ease, that's another one I pull apart, because rather than seeing it as a sickness or an illness, it's just a lack of ease. We have a lack of ease somewhere in our body or in our consciousness. What's it seeking to tell us? Because it's just information. And the body isn't making a mistake. It's not going wrong. It's not doing this at random. It has a purpose, and it's seeking to share that purpose with us. So it's the dialogue that can help us to learn and understand and make changes. So it starts off with something that pushes us into stress, and it's a very subjective thing. So I might be in a situation with my twin. I don't actually have a twin, but just for the sake of, we're otherwise absolutely identical. We might be in a situation and they're fine with it and I'm traumatized, or it has shocked me deeply. And when I have that deep level of shock, my body goes into that sort of moment of freeze, and then I go into fight or flight, or one of the stress responses. And if I don't have a coping strategy in that moment, then the energy of what has happened, my body goes, how do I deal with this? And it'll put it in wherever in the body it feels is most appropriate. And we're very metaphorical beings, so we see food in the same way as information. If you listen to our language, I bit off more than I could chew. I couldn't swallow it. It left a bad taste in my mouth. It hit me in the stomach and just sat there like a lump of lead. Couldn't digest it. I couldn't get it out of my life. So if something comes in that feels like I can't swallow it, the energy will go to somewhere in the swallowing. If I can't digest it, it'll go to my stomach. If you think of an animal, say a lion out in Africa and it swallows a piece of bone that is too big to go all the way through. It gets stuck in its stomach. Its stomach will start to secrete more acid in order to break that bone down so that it'll go on through the digestive system and the lion won't die. It's basically that survival mechanism. And we're the same. So if we swallow something, if we take in some information that feels like, this just will not digest, I can't get rid of this, then our body will respond to help us digest it. But because it's being very metaphorical, that's going to go probably somewhere in the digestive tract. It'll hit the stomach, it'll hit the intestines. Okay. And if it carries on, then that's going to start causing changes in our body. We're not yet feeling sick. While we're in that stress phase, what we generally feel is restless. We might have insomnia, cold hands and feet, chilly, and we'll probably not have much of an appetite, but we might crave sugar and caffeine. All for a purpose. Okay. We're restless so that we're active to try and find an answer. We've got insomnia so that we're awake longer to try and find an answer. We are not very hungry and we're cold extremities because the blood has gone to those fight-flight organs. And we might crave sugar because I need that quick fix. I need that quick energy so that I can fight or flee. But when something happens that resolves the stress to a greater or lesser degree, so it might completely resolve the stress, it might shift it a little bit, we can start to release some of that stress. Now we start to feel sick. So now we'll get things like the upset stomach, the aches and pains, the fever, the fatigue. Again, all of these have purpose. The fatigue is to make us rest because we need to heal. And the aches and pains are our muscles recovering. Like if we've been to the gym, we lift weights in the gym to break the muscle fibers so that they come back built up and stronger. When does it ache? The day after or 2 days after, when you're lying in bed thinking, I can't move. I did too much yesterday. And that's the same ache and pain as we feel when we've got the flu or our body's trying to recover from something. So it's all of these things, understanding just what those symptoms are, that help us to understand, well, what's our body been struggling with? What was that stress? How do I best support myself through that stress? What was the nature of it? And how do I support myself? And I personally use EFT because, like I said earlier, that's what I learned from Sam. EFT and other energy-based
Brilliant
modalities.
Okay, so tell me about your own personal journey. You said you suffered from ME and was it MND as well?
No, it was
tell us
ME
about what...
and that just fatigue. And I was listening to Miranda Hart's book, I haven't been entirely honest with you, and she talks about TAT. It was on her notes, TATT, TAT. So she asked the doctor, what is this? Tired all the time. Because that's a pandemic that we have in our society at the moment. I also was borderline for fibromyalgia, for diabetes, for a whole raft of other things. I had migraines, I had eczema, those little niggly things that of themselves they're an irritation, but when you start to put them together, then they really start to impact on your life. I had IBS as well, and it was coming to understand what exactly was going on for each one of those. For my eczema, it was about separation, because that's what our skin is about, contact, connection, or the lack of it. My migraines they started when I was 13, and they're actually a healing peak. So that's the body starting to push out things that it doesn't need. Fibromyalgia, aches and pains, I've already talked about that. Fatigue from the ME, I've talked about that. But it was each of the symptoms I suddenly understood why my body had been doing that. I thought it was attacking me. I thought it was letting me down. I thought it was going wrong. I hated my body, absolutely hated it. But learning all of this stuff, I fell in love with it again. It does so many things for me. And having unplugged from our city life and moved to the country, so getting away from all of those things that were stressing me and didn't feel aligned for me, moving here, my body does loads for me. I walk in the country, in the surrounding countryside. I've got a couple of horses to care for, so I'm poo picking twice a day. We've got the dog that we walk and running my business. My body is I celebrate it and I feel like it's my home. I value it so much now, which is 180 degrees from where I was.
That is truly amazing. Given the catalogue of things you were complaining of, and you call it a complaint when really it's something you should be like listening to. Now I'm hearing what you're saying. It's the message in Metaconsciousness is listening to what your body says. Now I've got a story that you can vet it for me, whether you think this is the same principle. But in my early 20s, I remember a guy who said, my dad was really bitter about the Germans in the war. And he carried this unforgiveness with him for so long that towards the end of his life, he kept saying to his dad, you've got to let it go, Dad. You've got to forgive them. You know, there's a long time past. And he suffered from chronic rheumatism and arthritis. And towards the end of his life, he said, you know what, son, I'm ready to do that now. So he led him in a prayer to let go of it. And quite amazingly, his rheumatism and arthritis started to clear up. And I've always carried that story as a testimony to prayer, but what I'm hearing and learning you say today, it could be very much related, and I wonder if you think the same thing.
First of all, we don't forgive for the people that we're forgiving. We forgive for ourselves, because it's setting us free. Otherwise, it's like Marley's ghost and all those chains and boxes that he's dragging along through his life, through his ghostness. But we're doing that in our lifetimes with all that baggage that we can't let go of. Forgiveness allows us to let go. In terms of arthritis, anything itis is inflammation, and that's in the healing phase. So potentially when we are carrying something that we only shift a little bit, then we're able to let go so much. And then it might be that we haven't released everything, or that we're being re-triggered. So if, for example, that person was so angry at the Germans, then anything maybe that brought that to mind. You know, every celebration that we have when we celebrate like the 11th of November and so on could re-trigger that anger. And then potentially he was able to put that aside for a while, not forgive them as such, but it's not there in the forefront of his mind. He's not stressing and angry about it in the same way. And then he might have a flare up because he's been able to put that aside. But while he's in his anger, he wouldn't be feeling the pain because he's in his fight flight. And our body is designed to be numb during the fight flight, because if we're fighting and we get hit and we go down going ow, 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 or we're running away, stub our toe, and we're hopping around, we might not escape. So we're designed to be numb so that we can flee, so that we can fight and succeed in order to survive. But then once we get to the safe space, and we're able to, that's when we start to really feel, that was really hard. I'm beginning to ache now, that I didn't realize I was cut and bleeding and all the rest.
Understood. Yeah, well, I'm convinced very much so that, you know, you carry stress around. It can manifest in all kinds of places. It can, like you say, it can be stored around in your gut. It could be tension in your shoulders and your back. It could be, and it could go down into your organs as well, can't it? I'm guessing. From what I've heard, and, you know, dare I say it, even the big C is a result of, you know, carrying stress for long, sustained periods of time.
Yeah, which big C? I take it you mean the cancer big C, not the COVID
cancer,
big C.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
What's really hit me on both of those was reading Gabor Mate's book, When the Body Says No, because he looks at cancer and various other conditions as well, looking at, is there a cancer personality? And he's saying that we're not born with a cancer personality, but we may develop one because of trauma. And it doesn't have to be that big T trauma. It can be those little cumulative things that turn us into a nice, people-pleasing person, which is often a personality that has been linked with cancer. And
is that right?
So he looks at other other conditions as well. And then Bessel van der Kolk, who says the body keeps the score, because it does. Our body holds all of this stuff. But A.H. Almaas says, sorry, can I just share this quote? Because I love this quote from A.H. Almaas. I don't remember it word for word as a paragraph, but basically he's saying that our pain is our pain. It's not going to happen to anybody else. It's going to happen to us. But it's not our body beating us up, being masochistic. It's the part of us that loves us the most, that wants us to be our fullest self. So it's just trying to give us a nudge and draw our attention to what the body's asking us in its wisdom to let go of, so that we can step more fully into who we were born to be.
Amazing. That is truly profound. So looking back on your own transformation, would you consider yourself free from most or all of the conditions you were suffering from in the past?
Yeah, I don't have those conditions anymore. Occasionally I'll get a little blip, like I had a little bit of eczema a while back, and it came up on the back of my hand. The area is significant, but knowing Metaconsciousness, I was able to go, right, ask the back of my hand effectively, what's going on here? What are you trying to tell me? Because it was a breakout of eczema, which means that I've let the thing go because I'm having an itis moment. So what was that part of my body trying to tell me that it had been able to let go of? And then I could check in to see if I let go of it all. If not, I'll do some tapping, some EFT. And it was actually that I'd been afraid I was going to get my wrist slapped. And when I went to the meeting where I was expecting the wrist slap, it wasn't a wrist slap at all. Phew! So my skin was able to go, thank goodness, let go of that eczema.
That's amazing. So subconsciously, you were carrying a fear, and a metaphorical one at that, slapping wrist.
Yes.
As you were fear of being chastised or pulled up on something.
Yeah.
And it was manifesting as an outbreak of eczema on your wrist, on your hand. Amazing. Oh, wow. This is sending shivers down my spine. It's so powerful, isn't it? Give us an idea. Like, you've unplugged from Bristol. You're near. You describe where you live now and how happy it makes you feel.
I don't think I can. I can't put it into words because it's just indescribable. We lived in the suburbs. We weren't right in the middle of town or anything, but I wanted green. I was desperate to be surrounded by nature and green and all that healing, wonderful energy. And that's what we've got. We can't see any neighbours from where we live. There are neighbours a distance away, like a couple of 100 yards down the road, but there are just trees and hills and green fields, and we're on spring-fed water, so we have a stream which in the winter it's dry now, in the summer, but just runs behind here. And we have 8.5 acres, and we have fruit trees. We've been growing some vegetables this year. So being able to just step out into your garden and pull the food for your dinner. We've got herbs, which I use for myself, for the horses. It's just magical. And as soon as we turn off the main road, the A road, we're onto this little lane, which is all beech trees and oak trees, some of which are quite old. And the dappled sunlight, I have a thing about trees and sunlight filtering through the leaves. It's just like a magical space. You can just feel the healing power of nature as you drive up, and people who visit say it's like entering another world. So it is that full unplug. You unplug from busyness, you unplug from the routines of your life that can keep you stuck, you unplug from connection to the Wi-Fi and all of that stuff going on. Our phone reception is a bit dodgy sometimes, but it's that space to breathe, to have stillness. I'm passionate about stillness, for being able to listen to that wisdom that we carry within, because it's such a small, gentle voice. So yeah,
that is so beautiful. Like, the transformation I've heard you say since the top of this call to now, I can feel it, and I hope anyone watching or listening is also feeling how worthwhile it is to stop and take stock and have a review. So tell us about the process. Let's say someone like yourself 20 years ago or 10 years ago was coming to you now. How would a session with you work? And I notice you may have a course or workshops. How do you work, and how does it work?
For the main thing of what I do, the Metaconsciousness, I ask people to write a timeline, and I have a video explaining what that's all about. But the purpose of writing a timeline is partly because I do an analysis of it. It really helps me with understanding what's going on and then helping the person to understand what's going on. But it's also with the person themselves, because as you write your timeline, you start to see in a new way. It's like journaling. You get to take a step back and go, oh my goodness, that's what I've been through in my life. As somebody actually said to me who'd thought nothing big has ever happened to me, and they wrote it all down and went, oh my goodness, really? I've been through all that? So it's that. It's also recognizing the things that you have survived, that you have that strength within you. You did that. You got through that from your abilities and your strength. the inner wisdom and whatever that you drew on, you've learned so much along through your life, and a lot of that is transferable skills. So if it served you in one place, you can use it again somewhere else. You might need to tweak it a little bit, but that's fine. And it's also looking at the person's, I look at their play styles. I love bringing fun and play in. That's such an important part of well-being. Looking at what they love, what lights them up, what feels aligned for them. So my unplugging was to come to the country. Somebody else's unplugging might be very different. I love nature and animals. My husband is an engineer. His take on things is very different. He sees patterns and creativity in a very different way from the way I do. I would look at the fractals of nature. He would look at an engine part. But we're both appreciating beauty and feeling lit up and joyful from that. So it's very much what is in that person's own perspective on what's right for them. So we explore that together and look at what their body's doing, what symptoms they might be experiencing. So people who maybe have chronic fatigue, having been through that myself, that seems to be a lot of what people come to me with, or people who have symptoms that doctors can't explain. There are a lot of diseases that are described as idiopathic. Doctors can't explain why they've come up, or often how to deal with them, how to address them. People maybe who've just been told you have to learn how to manage your symptoms. Off you go. What do I do? How do I manage my symptoms? Or somebody I recently connected with who told me the top centre for ME in the country, Sheffield at the time that she went, just told her she had 5 teaspoons of energy that she had to learn how to manage through her day, which to me just sounded, it's very fear-based, it's very lack-based, very limiting. Whereas I want to help people see that we don't need to have limitations, we don't need to be fear-based, we don't need to focus on lack. There is so much, there's a wealth, there's an abundance out there. How do we tap it? And in here, how do we tap into that and allow that to flow? Whereas I think quite often we feel that we're pushed into a certain shape, you know, that round peg in the square hole. Versus if I can just allow myself to be me, I have all that freedom. And then I've got the energy of that freedom versus the energy of, oh, I have to fit in to that hole that I've been given, that somebody put me into that maybe doesn't feel like a good fit at all.
Amazing. So how about someone who's just got a very dim outlook? So let's say someone's just swallowed all the red pills, they're now black pilled, they can't stop thinking the world's going to rats. I mean, it is in a lot of ways, but could you help someone with that kind of dismal outlook? I'll call it dismal because that's a place I was in a couple of years ago, and I just thought, how do I break free of this? What would you say to someone feeling like that? Because, you know, I know I can try and help them financially, but there's also a mindset shift and a spiritual shift. How would you help someone in that situation?
I have a workshop called the Joy Compass, which is about listening to our body, because our body shows us what feels good for us. So when I'm aligned and when I feel lit up and I feel joy, and it's not that I have to go looking for it, it's just there. Versus what do I feel like when the world just feels heavy and grey and horrible? As a therapist once said to me, what lights you up? What do you enjoy? What makes your heart sing? And I just wanted to say nothing. But somewhere within me, I said nature, and I kind of went, did I say that? Where did that come from? I don't think that's true. But it did. My body knew, and it put that out there for me. So I help people to tune into and listen to their body, to give themselves permission. And you might have noticed my little tagline there. My business name is Wild Wellbeing. Wild is an acronym. And that's a large part of how I would support somebody in addressing that. It stands for wonder. So often as we get older, we get jaded, we get cynical, we look at the world through tired eyes. And I encourage people, look at the world through childlike eyes. Give yourself that permission. How would a child look at that? So see it as something new, have that beginner's mind. What's a rainbow? Why is the sky blue? What are stars? How far away are the stars? When we're children, we just ask questions. Get back to that curiosity. We just want to learn. We want to know more. We find this world fascinating. Get back to that. And it might be about, well, what maybe when you were a child, what did you enjoy? Because so often we have been steered off track by education, careers advice, the job we got stuck into that we didn't really enjoy. Allow yourself to go back to, and it doesn't have to be change of career, but just to do something that lights you up, that you enjoy. Enjoy. It's a choice. We get to bring joy into our life. I is for intuition. Listening to our gut and allowing it to guide us. Moments of stillness to hear that small quiet voice within. L is loving ourselves. So often we are our own worst critic. And there's a meme that goes around every so often. You've been beating yourself up long enough. Has it worked? No. Try loving yourself instead. See where that takes you. See how that allows you to open up and blossom. And D is dancing with life. Because I think I hear people say, and I used to be one of the worst at this, is 1 step forward and 2 steps back. I'm not getting anywhere. But if that was a dance, say a waltz, you're guided around the floor and you sometimes go backwards, you sometimes go sideways, you sometimes go forward, or you might be leading sometimes. We're dancing with life. It doesn't matter what way you're going. For me, it's not about what you do, it's about how you do it. Do you do it with joy? Do you do it lightly? Or are you clumping through life with these big hobnail boots thinking, I hate this, I'm miserable? I was doing that, and I can see now, with hindsight, where that was taking me. And then when I shifted, where that took me. So that's what I encourage people to give themselves the space and time to explore with compassion, because we also need to forgive ourselves when we go through that journey for maybe allowing ourselves to be shoehorned into something that it didn't feel like a good fit, but we felt we should, could, have to, must. My mum, I'm very fortunate, my mum from an early age was telling me, drop that from your vocabulary. It's not good, it's not helpful. So to let go of those things and to bring more of the things that recharge us and fill us with joy and excitement and enthusiasm.
Well, that's beautiful. And so I take it you work as one-to-one, and you do workshops. I presume that's groups or individuals attending a more physical presence, is it, or is it online as well?
I do the occasional webinar. I prefer face-to-face because I love, like I say, I'm all about connection and about feeling things, feeling the emotions, feeling that connection, and I find that easier face-to-face. Also, with webinars and things, you get to a certain number and you stop being able to see everybody, stop being able to see individuals, and that is what lights me up. So that's what I prefer. I do some online, but I prefer the face-to-face.
Okay, and are those anywhere near where you live then? Are you in rural settings for those?
I'm right here in this room, so yes, in a rural setting, and part of that is to invite people to come out of their day-to-day life, come away from all that stuff that's holding them stuck, come away from the Wi-Fi and the devices, and just give yourself the space and time and freedom to explore with deep compassion for yourself what it is that you actually might like to create for yourself.
Brilliant. So I'm going to ask you for your contact details shortly, Robin, but before I do that, what's on your mission map, if you like, for the next few years? Have you got any projects, any ideas that you want to let the audience know about?
At the moment, it seems to be all about collaboration, which I'm loving. So I'm working with a lovely networking colleague of mine called Jalpalai, who runs Lollywise. She's all about bringing money and financial education and well-being to young people. And so she and I are working on a Wild and Wealthy workshop, hopefully launching that in October with a resource to support it as well. And as I was saying before, I think before came on the call, I'm not sure now, that I'm using my sign language skills with the wellbeing learning that I've had over the years to go to the deaf community. So I co-host a bereavement peer support group following a workshop that my colleague Jane and I ran back in 2019. So we've run it all the way through COVID and the online years, and it's still online now. That's once a month, 5:30 on the second Thursday of the month, UK time, for hearing people, but I've also started to do something now for the deaf community. So running workshops for them on grief and grieving and loss, and then exploring some other options there as well.
Yeah, I lost my stepson last year, and it was a big big impact to my family, and we're all still suffering. And thank you. And there's so much of a need for support in all kinds of ways, really. I mean, we're getting it from each other, which is the main thing. Our family are pretty good. So, but where that's not immediately available, then support networks that you offer here is so valuable.
Because we just don't talk about it in our society. Death is still such a big taboo that if you've experienced bereavement, where do you go? Who do you talk to? When you've got all of these feelings bubbling up inside that need to be expressed, get them out, and to be able to witness them for yourself. I think it's very important to have a space that holds 100%. That for you.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I must admit, you can find counselling services out there, but it's still, you need to find someone who works well or right for you, and that's often the challenge. So it's been an absolute joy talking to you, Robin. Is there anything I missed out, or anything that you wished I'd asked you? Any other points you'd like to make?
I think the only thing was, I was meaning to come back around to the COVID question, in that we've, the list of symptoms of COVID, it seems to cover absolutely every symptom you could possibly imagine, as far as I can see now. Yeah. So with Metaconsciousness, we are working with somebody who has something like COVID, fibromyalgia, the flu, ME. There are a raft of symptoms that people can experience, and sometimes it's a checklist, particularly for things like fibro and ME and chronic fatigue. Which things are you checking off on the list? Right, that's the label that we'll put on what you've got. But for Metaconsciousness, we say that is just a label. Let's look at your symptoms as individual symptoms and look at, why do you have that? Why do you have that? Why do you have that? Same with COVID or any of those kinds of things. If there are a list of symptoms that you're experiencing, we will explore each one. We'll chunk it down, because each one, they may be connected, but each one is also separate. So if you've got sinusitis, and if you've got a cough, and if you've got aches and pains, they're separate things. Let's address them separately and get that understanding what each one is trying to tell you. And then we can address each of them, rather than just trying to see it as a whole, which is too much. I'm all about keeping things simple. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. And, even though, I have to say it, a lot of the news bulletins and information coming out of mainstream media was absolute nonsense. On the other hand, there were people suffering symptoms, and, I've got my theory about what that was. But regardless of what I think caused it, you still have to deal with those symptoms. There genuinely were people with pretty chronic symptoms, which, either they were environment, this is my theory, either they were environment, but if you're suffering in an environment, maybe some was emotional, but maybe some was environment. So, I think keeping an open mind about all these things is really important, because you don't really know what's caused it. And, I would have been really pleased to have met someone like you, or referred you to someone who I knew was suffering from, chesty or tight this, tight that, different symptoms. I would have much rather have had them speak to you than go off to the doctor for some medication. But I'm not here offering medical advice. I have to say that, because we're on YouTube, and I am by no means an expert. But at the same time, having a second opinion carries an awful lot of value, especially if you've got stuck with traditional big pharma medicine, is what I call it these days. Because sadly, our medical
So the first diagnosis that you're given is simply an opinion. It's not always right. And from my experience, again, this is just my experience, and with veterinary medicine as well as our human medicine, that doctors can, at least sometimes, tend to err on the side of caution, i.e. they give you the worst case scenario, which is not necessarily the case. And with cancer diagnoses, it depends on which doctor you go to, in which country, what they tell you the level of the cancer is, or even if they decide that it's cancer or it's something else. So you don't have to take what is said as absolute truth. If you're not happy with a diagnosis, do ask for a second opinion and work with your medical team as much as you can. But you were saying about the cause of things and whether they're emotional or whatever. To me, there is no difference. Whether it's emotional, it's cognitive, it's physical, they're all interconnected and interdependent. If there's something physical going on, there's something emotional and cognitive going on. If there's something cognitive, there'll probably be a physical and an emotional behind that as well.
I guess I guess where I was going is that I think some of the causes was the rollout of a certain frequency, but beyond that theory, what would you have to lose essentially from going in to reconfigure how you're thinking and figure out, is this an effect of something that I've caused, or you might have caused mentally, or a belief that you hold, or something that you've been punishing yourself mentally? I mean, what have you got to lose to find that out? Because it's not like here's one treatment, big pharma treatment versus another. They're chalk and cheese, and someone weighing up their options, I would thinking, well, what have I got to lose? I've tried the medical route, or I don't even want to go down the medical route, but I am still suffering from X, Y, and Z. What have you got to lose? So
that whole thing as well, that as soon as you take something medicinal, that's not just impacting on one thing, it's impacting on the whole of your body system. So if you want to support your body system through that, or you choose to go purely holistic, then it's about having options, because we're all different, we're all individuals, and what works for one won't necessarily work for another. So give yourself permission as well to listen to what feels right for you, and if that's not what Big Pharma is saying, that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Allow yourself to disconnect from what's essentially now become quite a corrupt mechanism for treating people. Not that I wouldn't go to hospital with my broken leg, but certainly for treatment for ailments, quite often it's a reward mechanism that the doctors get tempted by, and they end up becoming drug pushers in the end. I'm going to finish on a much more positive note than that statement. So what would you like to say to someone who's never heard of metaconsciousness? We've heard about it today, but you've been working it, doing it, seeing results. What would you say to someone who's never heard of it, but until today they've now got an insight? How would you like to finish off the conversation with them?
If you'd like to know more, if you've got any questions, I'm always happy to talk about this stuff, so just get in touch, and I'm just for a conversation, and I'm very happy to do my best to answer any questions you might have. I also run a workshop, which is a face-to-face one here in Abergavenny, but I'm happy to travel as much as I'm able to with other commitments to share that. If you have a group and a venue and you'd like me to come and talk to you, then just, again, give me a shout, we can talk about that. Or I have an online version of self-study that's supported with Zoom calls. So if you would like to study more about it, and you're not able to travel to Abergavenny, there is that option as well. But if anybody has any questions, the first thing is just to give me a shout and let's have a chat.
Fantastic. Now, give us an idea. I'm going to put all your contact details you've given me in the show notes, and we're going to go out on multiple platforms. But before we wrap up, let's just see, where would you like people to visit first, and where's your content currently?
So the first place to go is my website, which is wild.uk. So that's u-i-l-d.uk. And on there is a search box. So if you can't find anything, just stick something in the search box and hopefully you'll be able to locate what you need. But there's a whole series of tabs across the top, and there's one that's just about connecting with me. So go on there. There's my WhatsApp, there's my email, there's a contact form that you can just fill in and send straight from the website. And if you look, I think it's under resources, there are all my links for socials. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn and YouTube. So happy for people to connect with me anywhere.
And I've watched some of your content on YouTube, and it's great. There's a couple of like long form seminars in there, or more information packed content. So do go off to Robin's YouTube if you want to see her in action. And so it's been an absolute delight talking to you, Robin. I've learned so much, and I think we'll be in touch. I think I want to talk to you about one or two things. So is there any final things you want to say before we wrap up?
Just thank you so much, Robin. It's been a joy to be here. As I say, I just love talking about this stuff. Anything that's about well-being and all of that, I enjoy talking about it. And thank you. I would love to carry on this conversation, because I think there's so much that you and I could talk about for hours on end.
Yeah. Well, I know I'm all about kind of personal development, but this the area you specialize in is so niche and so powerful. It would be an absolute travesty not to share it with my audience. So glad we connected. Until we see each other again, Robin, you've been totally unplugged, and I can see you're unstoppable now, which is a joy to see. So thank you for listening, everybody. Until the next episode, see you again soon.
I feel a shift now, I've got to move off the floor, 'cause I'm unplugged and unstoppable. No force could ever break this mold of titanium. You can't shake me, oh, 'cause I'm unplugged, unplugged. I'm unplugged, unplugged. I'm unplugged, unplugged and unstoppable. Yeah, Now I'm reborn into a new life. I choose my new life and leave my old one behind. Yeah, 'cause when I open my eyes now to look, I see so much more. I feel a shift now and I've got to move off the floor, 'cause I'm unplugged and unstoppable. No force could ever break this mold of titanium. You can't shake me, oh, 'cause I'm